Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective, and then the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with the biblical worldview. If you like the show, you've been listening, I'd encourage you to hit the subscribe button, leave a review. That'll let others know the show is worth listening to and certainly help advance the cause of Christian education. Today's extra credit version of the Clearly Christian Podcast is a deeper dive into the chalkboard points from our recent conversation with writer and podcaster Maria Baer, co-host of Breakpoint Weekly. We had a great discussion over a new book sweeping the country right now called The Anxious Generation. And so the author was Jonathan Haidt. We talked all about technology. We talked all about children in our schools. We talked all about the influences of children in Christian schools, public schools. It was simply a great conversation. And we talked a lot about what it means to be made in God's image. I know you would love that conversation. I know you would look forward to hearing what it is that she has to say. She's well studied on these issues as she is, like I said, podcasting on this every day with John Stonestreet. So at this time, I'd like to bring in our producer, Brian Lefelock, Brian Media Strategies. Great to have you with us. And so tell us, what did you think about the show? Some follow-up questions there.
So as a parent of kids, I've followed very closely, and I'm interested. These cell phones, they're there. So from a parent's point of view, we can't stick our heads in the sand. Every kid has them. We talked in the show, you talked with Maria a lot about, the dangers of them. And I don't know if you said it, but like the evils of them. But we have them. What are we supposed to do with our kids now that they're so indoctrinated?
Right. Yeah. Great point. And the author of the book is going to suggest this, and this is what's really remarkable, that the public is kind of taking hold of this. And like I said, these state legislatures all over the country are thinking actually about putting in legislation where it would become the law in that state not to put a cell phone in the hand of a child prior to age 16. Wow. I mean, which sounds radical to those of us that we see, adolescents, tiny 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, and they don't necessarily use the cell phone for calling people and connecting, but they use it for games and things of that nature. And he's saying, listen, you can't start that. You really shouldn't even start with third-party apps that are studying and following the algorithms of your small child either. So you shouldn't really even give them your iPad at those ages. And he's saying the smartphone, especially because it is designed to hook you in, especially those third-party apps, don't give them a smartphone until age 16. And then prior to age 16, do everything in your power. Like you said, you can't ignore it. It's going to be there, but do everything in your power to really, train them on obviously what's right, what's wrong, what they can view, what they can't view, and go ahead and talk to them about, listen, there are things in this phone that are just not for you. And unfortunately, you're going to be exposed to them, like pornography and violence and, adult language and things of that nature that as adults, we may not think a whole lot of. But at age 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, your brain can't handle it. And that's the point that he makes. It's not for you. It will hurt you mentally. And so somehow we have to get that message across to parents to say, this can be, it's an immoral thing here. It's not, it's not evil just because it's laying on your table, right? But it can be used for evil. So it can take you down a bad path. And there are parts of this technology that are not for you. You're not old enough. We'll introduce you to those parts, when you've been well trained. But especially prior to age 16, you have no business seeing this video, seeing this third-party app, because I can't control you on it, and your brain will not be ready for it. And you will be rewired to a place where it will destroy you in many ways. Trust me, I'm the adult. I know what I'm talking about.
So, and Maria talked a lot about what they teach in schools, and it's a perfect way to dovetail. I've got another follow-up question, though. They're teaching now that it's not really up to a parent to tell kids. Kids should just find their own way. And you're saying that, do we know enough as parents to say, don't use this? That's kind of our responsibility, isn't it? Or have we forgotten that?
Yeah, totally. I think we have forgotten it because we're so Well, some parents are struggling with it as well. That's part of the problem is, how many adults do we see that are ignoring each other at the table because they just can't get off of Facebook or they can't get off of Instagram or something like that. So we're doing a bad job modeling as adults. And then so our kids see this and it's going to perpetuate this. But you're exactly right. Parents have to step up and say, listen, and I like the point that he makes that this was largely an uncontrolled experiment on humanity with their own children. There is no script for this. We can't look back and say, well, look what the Romans did, or look what this is all brand new, or look what they did in the 40s and 50s, for crying out loud. No, this is brand new technology. What we have discovered, child, is there is a lot of bad stuff here that, again, you're just not ready for. And as an adult, you can deal with this with an adult mind, but I've got to step in and be the parent here.
I know this isn't a promotion or a commercial for private schools or Christian schools, though I know that's where you come from. But can you give me an example? Like, let's say a student at Mansfield Christian School or in private school in 6th or 7th grade, and then another that transferred over in 6th or 7th grade from a public school education. They've had those phones. They've been doing it without any kind of monitoring. They've been taught things about truth that, like, what's the difference? Can you see a palpable difference between someone who's been young and through a Christian school and someone who transferred over, talking about kids?
Yeah, for sure. And especially if we have done our job to make sure that the home, the church, and the school are all on the same page. And when I hear that as a young child, especially in elementary and even middle school, if all the adults in my life, I mean, the coaches, the teachers at school, my parents, the people at church, all the adults in my life are saying, this is right, this is wrong. Well, those kids tend to be a little bit quicker at recognizing, yep, this is not a good thing for me. I'm not saying they're perfect. They always make good decisions. Nope, they're sinners saved by grace just like everybody else. And these kids that have come up through MCS, they have problems just as well. But they are very, their spirit is in check because this is the world that they live in. Their whole culture has been designed to tell them this is the path you should go down. And when they recognize, like she was talking about in the podcast about can you spot the lie, when they've been trained at young ages by every adult in their life to spot the lie, then when they come across those things that aren't healthy for them, they're more apt to say, I need to kind of pause here. I'm not going to fall for this hook, line, and sinker because this clearly does not represent the worldview of every adult in my life that I'm hearing. And so kids who have not had that background, maybe it's just been mom and dad, but they've never had that at school. They don't go to church regularly. They're more apt to say, could be right, could be wrong. Let me dabble in it and see if it really is as harmful as they say it is.
And what do you say then to those who say that we're protecting those kids in those private situations from the real world? This is the way it is out there. Why are you teaching them this here in this little bubble?
Yeah, we're saying you're absolutely right. We're protecting them. Why would I want to expose them? Right? I mean, I was going to say that earlier with Maria. You don't receive training in the military behind enemy lines, right? You get your training with a group of people who are like you. I mean, there's a great quote that a pastor said. He said, why should we be surprised that when we give our children to Caesar for their education, what we get in return are Romans? Same dynamic, right? Same dynamic. If you want that training, then give them that training.
And then that's an amazing point. And just to follow up and kind of wrap this up, then she also talked a lot about being made in the image of God. And a counterpoint I would ask is, weren't cell phones, isn't technology of God? Isn't everything on this planet of God? Or is there some things that man is just screwing up?
Yeah, well, the capacity to use technology and invent cell phones and create all these things is an incredible testament to the mind of humans, which is being made in God's image. And so the technology is fantastic, right? We put a man on a moon. I mean, we are not going to poo-poo that and say, well, that was wrong. No, absolutely. These things that we're creating are a reflection of the fact that we are an intelligent human designed by an intelligent being. And so we can do these things. They're fantastic. But then, unfortunately, because of our human nature, we abuse it and we leave God out and we say, okay, well, he's irrelevant to this technology. No, he's not. He gave you the mind to create it. Now use him. Now use it for a purpose that that is for the common good of man, which is why I put you here on earth, and use it to glorify me. If you use it and leave me out, you're going to take it, just like everything else, down a wrong path, and you're going to abuse it, and there's going to be problems. So it's a direct reflection of exactly what it is that he wants us to do, but again, we can abuse it. Well, great questions, Brian. Appreciate that. And again, thank you so much for joining me today on Clearly Christian Podcast. And I trust that now you know more about these issues and what it will take to raise a child spiritually, emotionally, and mentally that is happy and healthy and living for the Lord. Again, if you like the show, help us spread the word, follow along, leave a review, hit the like button. We appreciate you so much taking time out of your day for Clearly Christian. Again, I'm Dr. Cy Smith. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.